Okay, here we go. What is the Riverview Corridor Modern Streetcar Project? Well, uh, there's some information here. The map on the left depicts what we call the locally preferred alternative. This is the route and mode that was chosen by the Policy Advisory Committee, the decision-making body for the project back in December of 2017. And the mode chosen is obviously modern streetcar on a route that connects downtown St. Paul to MSP Airport and the Mall of America, generally along West 7th Street. It would connect at downtown. We think it will connect around Central Station at the Green Line Station at Central Station, cross the river either on the existing Highway 5 bridge or on a new bridge, have a new station at historic Fort Snelling, and then connect with the Blue Line just upstream or north of Fort Snelling Blue Line Station, and then would run on the Blue Line all the way through Bloomington, through the airport, and terminate at the mall. The project, and there's some data on the project over there on the right. The project length is roughly 12 miles, 11.7 miles. There'd be 20 stations on the Riverview Corridor Modern Streetcar Project, 11 new stations, 10 of those stations in St. Paul along West 7th Street. Travel time is competitive with the existing bus. Travel time is estimated at 44 minutes. Existing bus service on Route 54 is about the same. We chose modern streetcar as the locally preferred alternative because it provided the highest ridership of all the other alternatives we studied. And we looked at a number of different transit rail alternatives and a number of bus alternatives. And we looked at a number of different routes that used the Canadian Pacific Rail Spur and that went through the newly developing Ford site as well. But we chose modern streetcar on this route as one that had the highest ridership. It provided the best service to people who depend on public transit, those people who are transit reliant and have perhaps no cars in their household or only one car in their household, and two working adults have to share that one car. So this serves those people the best we possibly can. We also believe that a rail alternative in modern streetcar is a much better incentive for development and redevelopment in the corridor, especially around station areas. It can be an opportunity for existing businesses to reinvest in themselves and expand, or for new development to occur around those station areas. Okay, on the next slide, the engineering and pre-environmental phase is what we are in now. What I described previously was completed in December of 2017. It was the pre-project development study. We've got a catchy new name for the phase of work that we're in now. It's the engineering and pre-environmental phase. We are expected to be working on this process for about 3 years. After we've chosen the route and mode in the pre-project development phase, now comes some of the more heavy lifting. It's the engineering work to design the project itself, the evaluation of environmental impacts and other impacts at stations, all very sensitive areas such as crossing the river, difficult engineering concepts of connecting to the Green Line in downtown, and other efforts like that. The Community Advisory Committee and Station Area Planning Task Force are meant to be people who are engaged in the project for that 3-year time span. We want you to be invested in this project. We want you to be invested in your neighborhoods, in your business groups, in you as a person who is experienced in traveling and living and working in this corridor to help us refine the modern streetcar concept. We'll be tackling a number of technical issues. The engineering team will be tackling a number of technical issues. I mentioned a few already. Connection to the Green Line in downtown. Mississippi River crossing. We've had some engagement already with tribal governments about the crossing and about the importance of the Fort Snelling and Pedote area. That'll be quite an engineering feat, crossing the river. Connection to the Blue Line is will be another good task that we'll have to take care of. Connection to the Blue Line near Fort Snelling. Connection to the Mall of America. Currently, the Blue Line runs at grade and crosses busy intersections, busy roads leading up to the Mall of America. Adding another rail transit facility through there will add to that traffic and adds to the conflict with automobiles. So we'll have to look at how we connect to the Mall of America. And of course, there are many more. I know parking is an issue. I know right-of-way preservation is an issue. Streetscape improvements along the route are an issue. Pedestrian and bicycle access, not only on West 7th Street, but crossing West 7th Street are another issue. There will be a number of issues we'll be tackling. Public engagement will be part of the process throughout. We will be having public meetings during the COVID-19 issue. We'll be having public meetings and other things and other events like this virtually. When COVID-19 subsides and we can meet in person, we will be having in-person meetings again. But as I mentioned before, we want the Community Advisory Committee and the Station Area Planning Task Force to be a group of citizens who stay invested in the project for 3 years. And you'll meet periodically, you'll be learning about this project and guiding and advising us on this project throughout, more so than just kind of hit and miss public meetings where people collect some information and provide a comment or two, and then we're gone again for a few months. Okay, on the next slide. This is a nice graphic showing our committee structure. As I mentioned, the two committees that we're forming are the Community Advisory Committee and the Station Area Planning Task Force. You'll notice that the Community Advisory Committee and the Task Force have direct feeds, those green arrows, into the Policy Advisory Committee. The Policy Advisory Committee is essentially the decision-making body for this study. It's comprised of local elected officials from Ramsey County, Hennepin County, St. Paul, and Bloomington. It includes a number of commissioner level people with Minnesota DOT, with Metropolitan Airports Commission, includes the St. Paul Mayor's Office as well, and other people on that committee. So your voice as part of these two committees will be voiced directly to those two. Both of your committees will voice your concerns and issues directly to the Policy Advisory Committee. The Station Area Planning Task Force has a box that heads out to the City of St. Paul. At the end of this process, the approved station area plans will go to the City of St. Paul for their Planning Commission. Their Planning Commission will be asked to adopt those plans into its comprehensive plan. So that's a different step rather than simply going to the Policy Advisory Committee and being sort of approved by that one body. Station area plans will go to the City of St. Paul, and Frank Alarcon will explain that in a little bit more detail as we go. All right, thank you. And I'll turn it over to Frank.
Thanks, Kevin. So my name's Frank Alarcon. I work with Kevin at Ramsey County. I'm a transportation planner there, and I'll be Ramsey County's staff point person for the station area planning component of this phase of planning for the Riverview project. So I'm going to just talk about what station area planning is, and then I'll share some information about the station area planning task force that we're forming. So just to provide a definition, there you go. Just to provide a definition of station area planning, it is a collaborative process that identifies ways to promote safe and direct station access and transit-oriented development near stations. And kind of the idea behind this is that when you make a big investment in improving transit in a corridor, you want to make sure that the stations that you're building are easy to walk to, they're easy to bike to, and that there's a lot of activity around stations, meaning people live there, people work there, people shop there, etc. So station area planning is the process that looks to really promote those activities and those safe connections to stations. Next slide, please. So what is a station area? In general, the way we define a station area is we start with the 1/2 mile kind of radius around each station, as you can see on this image. The reason we pick a 1/2 mile is that an average person walks about a 1/2 mile in roughly 10 minutes. Everybody walks at a different pace, so it's going to vary for every individual. But in general, a 1/2 mile is about a 10-minute walk. And research finds that people are generally willing to walk about 10 minutes to get to a high quality transit service, such as a modern streetcar. While a 1/2 mile is kind of the rule of thumb that we use, of course, every station area is going to differ a little bit depending on different barriers that might exist within that 1/2 mile. So if there's a lake or a river, obviously you can't develop or you can't walk in that area, so that would be kind of subtracted from the station area. Same with built features like a highway or railroad tracks can serve as a barrier and kind of change the shape of an individual station area. But the foundation that we start with is the 1/2 mile area around every station. Next slide, please. So the goal of the station area planning process for the Riverview corridor is to provide a vision for each station area within the city of St. Paul to thrive as a result of this investment that we're making in transit in the corridor, and to develop supporting policies and identify specific implementation steps for each station area plan. And plans they're really long-term documents. They look to guide development within each station area, not just in the short term, but really in the decades to come, both before the transit investment is complete and after construction is complete and the transit has started operating. Next slide, please. So just to go over the key tasks of the station area planning process, and this work will largely be produced by Ramsey County staff in very close collaboration with the City of St. Paul, as well as the consultant team that we've hired who bring a lot of technical expertise in planning and urban design. So to just go over some of those key tasks that, and the Station Area Planning Task Force will advise and guide all of this work. One of the key tasks is reviewing previous and ongoing initiatives relating to this corridor. So the reason we take a look at things like comprehensive plans and small area plans along the corridor is because we're not starting from scratch when we do station area planning. There's been a lot of planning work by the city, by district councils and other organizations along the corridor, and we want to take that into account so that the station area plans reflect the work that's already been done and that's already in effect. So other work that we do early in the process is evaluating current station area conditions. So we take stock of what's in each station area in terms of land uses, in terms of sidewalk connections, bike lane connections, et cetera, so that we know where we are, we know what the starting point is in each station area. We also look early in the process at station location refinements, and this is really an important task that we want a lot of public input on. Where exactly are these stations going to go? I mean, we have a general idea, we have a dot on the map of where stations are going to go, Randolph, Montreal, et cetera. But we haven't gotten to a level of detail yet where we know exactly the specific placement of each station platform in relation to intersections, buildings, et cetera. And so that's an area where the Station Area Planning Task Force is going to be asked to provide their input. Next slide, please. Other tasks, addressing public realm needs in station areas. So the public realm is really any elements within the public right-of-way that kind of give character to the area. So it can be things like landscaping, trees, bus stops, trash receptacles, art, crosswalks, you name it, that's the public realm. So we're going to be taking a close look at the public realm within these station areas. We want them to be attractive places where people want to go, where people want to use transit and want to live, want to shop. And that doesn't discount the fact that there's already a lot of great public realm along West 7th Street. And so we want to, kind of take advantage of what's already great and enhance it through this process. Defining future character areas. So that's really, when we talk about character areas, we're really talking about land use. Where do we expect land use in these station areas to change over the coming years and decades? Where do we expect it to stay the same and not change so much? And then we establish guiding principles, goals, and policies that address these land use changes or not changes in the years to come. We also look closely at circulation of vehicles, and parking and access to stations as part of that work. Next slide, please. Addressing movement. So when we talk about movement, we're really talking about people walking and biking. As I mentioned earlier, it's really critical that when you put in a transit investment, that people can get to the stations safely from either their homes nearby, from their businesses nearby, from their schools nearby, whatever they're doing in the station area, they need to be able to safely either walk or bike to and from the stations. The majority of transit riders are pedestrians, either walking or using a mobility device. And a significant proportion also arrive on bikes, and a smaller proportion are also nowadays using things like scooters and other kind of new mobility solutions. As part of that movement work, we're also looking at wayfinding. So wayfinding is really signage that helps people find their way to and from transit and destination. So that's something that'll be looked at. And also looking at parking needs. So this is going to involve engagement with businesses and other users of station areas to strike the right balance as it relates to the supply of parking within station areas. And last bullet here is identifying strategies for implementing the plans. So these plans are going to identify areas of future land use change, future biking and walking investments. But in order for them to really come to fruition in the years to come, we have to figure out how are these improvements and these changes going to be implemented. So the implementation plans look at financing opportunities, and other implementation opportunities in order to make these plans that the task force will guide a reality. Next slide, please. All right, so just to share some of the basic information about the Station Area Planning Task Force. Roles and responsibilities, as I've said, it's to guide the development of station area plans within the city of St. Paul. So the station area planning process does not cross the river into Hennepin County and Bloomington. The scope of the station area planning work that we're doing here is within St. Paul, which is part of the which is why coordination between Ramsey County, the city of St. Paul, and this task force is going to be critical. And we do have a couple folks in the meeting today joining us from the city of St. Paul, Department of Planning and Economic Development. Emma Siegworth and Anton Jervy are here, and in the Q&A session after this presentation, if you have any questions that are better answered by the city than the county, they're available to help answer those questions. So other responsibilities really guide these plans, and then at the end of the process forward them to the Policy Advisory Committee and the St. Paul Planning Commission for consideration and approval, as Kevin described earlier. So the composition of the Station Area Planning Task Force will be up to 20 members. Members can be residents of the St. Paul portion of the corridor, or people who own a business, work at a business, work at another employer in the corridor, go to school in the corridor, etc. There will be 2 co-chairs of the Station Area Planning Task Force. One of those co-chairs will be appointed by the City of St. Paul from the St. Paul Planning Commission. And so that's going to create really a formal linkage between the Station Area Planning Task Force and the St. Paul Planning Commission, because that relationship is so important. Membership will be chosen through the application process that's open today. Riverviewcorridor.com has all the information and the application available, and the application deadline is December 15th. And members will be chosen by the Policy Advisory Committee through that open application process. There will be emphasis on selecting members who can represent the diversity of the corridor in terms of demographics, life experience, age, etc. As we all know, the Riverview corridor is very diverse, and we want a broad range of perspectives on the Station Area Planning Task Force, as well as the Community Advisory Committee that Kevin's going to talk about in just a moment. Speaking of the Community Advisory Committee, the co-chairs of the Community Advisory Committee will be ex officio members of the Station Area Planning Task Force, and vice versa. So the co-chairs of the Station Area Planning Task Force will be members of the Community Advisory Committee, because we want these 2 advisory committees to be in communication with each other and exchanging information. As far as just meeting logistics, The task force is expected to meet every 1 or 2 months, starting in the spring of 2021 and going likely until late 2023. So roughly a 3-year period with meetings every 1 to 2 months. The meeting location, as long as the COVID-19 pandemic is still with us and it's not recommended to meet in person, we'll be meeting virtually just like this meeting. After, fingers crossed, it becomes safe again to meet in person, we will evaluate that. And if we do choose to have the committee meet in person, it will be along West 7th Street, accessible to transit, accessible to wheelchairs. And yeah, that's how that will work. So with that, I will hand things back to Kevin, and he'll talk about the Community Advisory Committee, which is the other committee that we're looking to form in the next couple of months here.
All right, thank you, Frank. The Community Advisory Committee, the whole purpose of being part of the Community Advisory Committee is to be engaged in the project design, the environmental work, the environmental analysis that will be done as part of this project, and the community engagement work. We want you to tell us what you like and what you don't like about project design. The project management team will be bringing you kind of work items. We'll want your feedback on issues such as should the modern streetcar be center running or should it be side running? Where should it be running in dedicated right of way and where should it be running in shared space with automobiles and things like that? So we want your opinion on that. We want you to help us understand how the project impacts not just the environment, but how it impacts mobility in the neighborhood. I know that pedestrian movement is very important. It's important for people to be able to walk up and down West 7th Street, to walk from 7th Street to the river, to get down what'll be the new Lexington Parkway and get to Crosby Park, things like that. So we want to know how you perceive impacts of this project. We also want your input on how we can better engage people throughout the corridor, even in the Bloomington side of things as well. We want to engage everyone along the corridor as much as possible. We don't want to leave anyone out. We don't want anyone to feel like their concerns haven't been heard, because there are a lot of different opinions and a lot of different good advice that we can collect from people in the corridor. We want you to provide a community perspective on these different project issues. It's okay to represent yourself. You know yourself better than anyone else, but we want you to be kind of an ambassador for your neighbors too. Feel free to, prior to a meeting, feel free to talk to your neighbors about something, about an issue that you'll be coming up on the Community Advisory Committee. Collect information, collect opinions from people you know in the corridor, or even from others who may not live in the corridor but may have a good opinion about it. We want you to talk to your business colleagues, to your fellow workers and your neighbors about the project and bring that information to us. The co-chairs will provide a committee report directly to the Policy Advisory Committee. As I mentioned before, the Policy Advisory Committee is essentially the decision-making body for the study. You'll get, the co-chairs of the committee will get to provide your input as CAC members directly to the Policy Advisory Committee. It won't be filtered through staff. It won't be summarized to the point where it's such a short report that it doesn't seem meaningful. So you'll be able to give your information directly to the decision makers. Okay, on the next slide. Some of the key tasks for the Community Advisory Committee include helping identify and prioritize benefits and impacts of trade-offs during project design. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but a good example of this, and I think I gave a couple examples earlier, but balancing the benefits for example, of a station at Fort Snelling at Bedote versus the impact of building a station at Fort Snelling at Bedote, the impacts of the value of having a station in an historic area like that versus the impacts that are caused by putting a station there. I mean, that's quite a juxtaposition of issues right there to be discussed. So we want your perspective on the benefits and trade-offs of impacts in the project design. We'd like you to assist with other working groups. We will have what we call issue resolution teams as part of this study. They will tackle individual problems. They might be location specific or they might be corridor wide, but on a certain topic like utility relocations or something along that nature. We'd like your assistance. We can bring those topics to you, and we'd like your assistance in helping us kind of better, I guess, better define the issues and concerns and problems and help us come up with solutions and ways to address that. We'd like you to identify key features in the corridor that are to be protected or enhanced. There are a lot of unique features and a lot of unique areas in this corridor that we're not necessarily all aware of. We're doing a cultural resources inventory, and that can be very specific to older style buildings and historic properties that are already well known. But there may be little gems in this corridor that we're not aware of. So we'd like your input on that. I think I saw a newspaper article where one of the short, there are a lot of angular intersecting streets along West 7th. I think one of those streets during the COVID issue, a restaurant turned that into seating space. That's could be a great opportunity where we can enhance uh, a feature in the corridor that can be used for commercial purposes or residential purposes or pedestrian purposes and things like that. So there might be things that we can enhance as part of this project. Last on the list here is advise on community engagement techniques and the extent of our reach. And I mentioned this before, but please help us inform everyone about the modern streetcar so that we can engage them and hear their voice. We'd like to hear from everyone. And there are groups of people in the corridor who don't speak English or don't speak English very well, or it's part of their culture not to stand up and raise their hand or be part of a meeting like this and voice their concerns, but they do have a voice, and we do want to hear what they have to say. Thanks. On the next slide. Here's another rundown of community advisory committee issues of roles and responsibilities. Again, you're going to advise the policy advisory committee directly on project design issues, how we develop this project, the environmental analysis that will go on to analyze impacts and look at and develop mitigation strategies, and community engagement opportunities and techniques and how we can get in touch with people. We'd like you to participate in assisting and coordinate specific work groups, and those are the issue resolution teams that I mentioned, and there may be other opportunities too as well. You may be working directly with district councils or business groups or something like that. In terms of membership, in a ballpark estimate, we're looking for, I think, 15 to 20 members. We want to make sure we're kind of geographically represented throughout the corridor, all the way from downtown, all along West 7th Street and into Bloomington. But we don't want the committee to be so big that it's difficult for a large number of people to have their voice heard in a meeting like this, to have an hour or 90 minutes time to get everyone's opinions heard on something. So we want to make sure that you have an opportunity to provide input. So we're trying to keep it, I guess, to 15 or 20 members. Membership will be chosen by the Policy Advisory Committee through this application process. And the application process is, the applications are available on the Ramsey County website in the Riverview Corridor project area, if you can find that. I don't know if we have the link in our presentation, but it's very easy to find on the Ramsey County website. And click on that and you get to an application form, very short thing to fill out, and please send that in. As Frank mentioned about stationary planning, we have an emphasis on selecting people who can represent the diversity of people who live in the corridor, people who work in the corridor, people who own businesses in the corridor. So we're looking for as rich a mix of people as possible. And as Frank mentioned, it includes age, ethnicity, different cultures. If you've been a longtime resident, or if you're a new person who's moved in, if you've lived there, if you're a second generation, third generation person who lives in West 7th Street, or if you're someone who's just moved into the area, we'd like you to apply to be on our committees. The Community Advisory Committee will be led by two co-chairs. The co-chairs will be chosen by committee membership. So at our first meeting, we'll organize and we'll choose our co-chairs. And as Frank mentioned too, vice versa, the co-chairs of the Stationary Planning Task Force will be ex officio members of the Community Advisory Committee. And as Frank described, it's to kind of intermingle your ideas, your thoughts, your concerns with those of the Stationary Planning Task Force. So if the Community Advisory Committee has a question or a concern about the stationary planning work, it doesn't have to go through a staff person to another to another staff person, to a consultant, to the stationary planning team or something like that. You can share that information directly with them. We're expected to meet every 3 months, or roughly quarterly. So we won't meet as frequently as the Stationary Planning Task Force, but we will be meeting approximately every 3 months during that whole 3-year period. So it is a time commitment. And during COVID-19, meetings will be virtual like this. Glad to see so many people on the call who have access to a computer or tablet or phone that they can join this way. So we will have meetings virtually, and when we can safely meet in person, as Frank described, the meetings will be held at an accessible building, accessible location somewhere within the corridor. that you can get there by transit on Route 54 and the other intersecting bus routes. Okay, on the next slide. Just some details, and these are common details to both committees. Work on these committees will be consensus-based kind of decision-making. When you forward your comments, concerns, and things like that to the Policy Advisory Committee, it'll be basically just a consensus discussion from the committee. We won't be running Robert's rules and taking motions and seconds and votes and roll call this and that. It'll be just a consensus-based kind of process. But if there's a dissenting opinion among Community Advisory Committee members on an issue, we will certainly share that other opinion or that concern with the Policy Advisory Committee as part of the whole CAC committee report. We will likely have 90-minute evening meetings. An hour is probably just not enough time to get through a lot of the issues we'll have on this particular project. So likely 90-minute meetings, likely in the evening, and we'll try to schedule them as conveniently as possible after everyone is home from work and you've taken care of family and you've had a meal. Then hopefully we can find a good time that works for everyone. Information will be shared with committee and task force members in advance of the meetings, so we won't dump a lot of information on you at the very beginning of every meeting and ask you to come up with meaningful content and input in that. We'll share information with you ahead of time. We can email it to you. We can work on however we can get that information to you so you can read it, absorb it ahead of time. You talk to your neighbors about it, talk to each other about it, and then come to the meeting ready to dive in and contribute. You'll have full staff support in setting up these virtual and in-person meetings and in taking notes and advancing slides and high-tech things like that. So you don't have to worry about doing a lot of that, only in logging in and getting into the Zoom meeting if we have it virtually like that, and then getting to the meetings when we can meet in person. And then access to virtual meetings can be a problem with some folks. If you don't have a computer or a tablet or a smartphone, it's very difficult. You can't join a meeting like this and see the slides and see each other and talk to each other like that. We'll have access to a conference call phone number, so you can join us that way, and we'll get you the information, the materials ahead of time so that you can print that out at home, or we could send you hard copies if need be, so that you can follow us along and contribute to the process over your phone. And with that, I think that is the end. Yep, thank you. Again, thank you for listening to us. We've got about an hour meeting here. We took up a little bit more than half of it. I saw some questions come up in the chat. Let's maybe tackle some of those first.